I'd worked as a wildlife biologist with the National Park Service for nearly 10 years, most of that time spent in the heart of the Great Smoky Mountains. My days were usually routine, filled with tracking native animal populations, tagging and studying black bears, and occasionally assisting in rescue operations. Over the years, I'd become intimately familiar with nearly every remote trail and hidden hollow around Mount LeConte. At least, I thought I knew it all, until that unsettling afternoon last September. My assignment had seemed straightforward at first. A local black bear had wandered deep into an isolated area, and my job was to track it down, document its movements, and ensure it wasn't interacting negatively with visitors. Early in the morning, I packed my gear and headed toward the mountain, feeling confident I'd locate the animal quickly and finish before nightfall. By midday, I found myself hiking deeper into unfamiliar territory. Dense undergrowth and towering pines loomed around me as I followed the bear's radio tracking signal. As hours passed, the trail became faint, then vanished completely. The forest grew eerily quiet, the usual bird songs replaced by oppressive silence. As I pushed onward, an unsettling feeling crept over me, an intuitive sense that I was being watched. Pausing, I scanned my surroundings, but nothing unusual appeared through the thick, tangled branches. The signal on my tracking device strengthened suddenly, leading me downhill toward a shadowy ridge I'd never visited. When I finally reached the bottom, I halted in surprise. Hidden deep within the woods stood a large compound surrounded by a tall, heavily camouflaged fence. Warning signs were attached every few yards along its perimeter, clearly stating restricted area, no trespassing, government facility. I'd never heard of any such place in the park, and certainly it wasn't on official maps or park records. Curiosity got the better of me, so I quietly edged closer, using thick vegetation to conceal my approach. Through the fence, I glimpsed several concrete buildings, all heavily reinforced with steel doors and barred windows. The facility seemed abandoned, the structures weathered and silent, yet something felt profoundly wrong. My pulse quickened, and my instincts screamed at me to leave immediately. Just as I turned to retreat, a distant sound made me freeze in place. It was a low, anguished howl echoing from somewhere deep inside the compound. The sound was chillingly animalistic, yet disturbingly human at the same time. Moving silently along the fence line, I searched for an opening, finally finding a section where the fence was damaged enough to slip through unnoticed. Heart pounding, I stepped onto the grounds, moving swiftly toward one of the smaller buildings. The howling continued, now joined by guttural growls and aggressive snarls, reverberating from somewhere below ground level. Approaching a window, I carefully peered inside. The room appeared empty at first glance, dimly lit by flickering fluorescent lights. Then movement drew my eye. A heavy steel door in the far corner swung open abruptly. Two figures emerged, both wearing military-style uniforms, holding rifles at the ready. They spoke hurriedly into handheld radios, their expressions tense. Within moments, a third man appeared, guiding something large and powerful at the end of a thick steel chain. My stomach twisted sharply as I glimpsed the creature clearly. It stood upright, muscular and massive, with black fur covering its powerful frame. Its canine head was unmistakable, the elongated snout filled with sharp, deadly teeth. The dogman fought viciously against the chain, snarling and snapping at its handlers, who struggled desperately to control it. My mind raced in disbelief. Was this some kind of government experiment or military project hidden deep within the Smokies? Were they holding these creatures captive, or worse, creating them? My legs trembled beneath me, my mind overwhelmed by fear and confusion. As the handlers led the dogman toward another room, the creature suddenly stiffened, sniffing the air. With terrifying speed, its glowing amber eyes snapped toward the window, directly at me. A ferocious growl erupted from its chest, echoing through the walls and causing my heart to nearly stop. Panic I stumbled back, sprinting toward the damaged section of fence. Behind me, alarms sounded loudly, lights flashing as voices shouted urgently. Gunshots echoed as I scrambled through the opening, tearing my jacket on sharp wire as I fled into the dense forest. Adrenaline surged through me as I ran blindly through the thick vegetation, ignoring branches tearing at my face and limbs. Behind me, footsteps crashed through the underbrush, closing fast. My lungs burned, my vision blurred, but sheer panic pushed me onward. Eventually, the sounds faded into distance, the pursuit abandoned. When I finally emerged from the woods, hours later, exhausted and shaken, I realized I'd lost all of my tracking equipment. I staggered back to my vehicle and drove away from Mount LeConte, my mind unable to process the terrifying encounter fully. I told no one at work about the hidden facility or the monstrous DOGMAN I'd seen. Yet, in the days following my encounter, strange vehicles appeared near my home, and unfamiliar people began watching my movements from a distance. Eventually, the surveillance stopped, but the paranoia never fully subsided. Months later, I quietly retired from my job with the Park Service, leaving behind the mountains I'd once loved so dearly. But even now, I find myself glancing over my shoulder, haunted by the memory of that day. The hidden government facility near Mount LeConte is a secret I'm certain was never meant to be discovered, and whatever horrors they're hiding behind those fences should remain buried deep within the shadows of the Smokies, away from the prying eyes of outsiders. I grew up in Knoxville, and for as long as I can remember, the Smokies were my playground. My friends and I used to explore abandoned places, looking for thrills and ghost stories to scare ourselves. Out of all the places we visited, the ghost town of Elkmont was always the most intriguing, an eerie place filled with crumbling cabins, vacant houses, and haunting echoes of lives long past. Of course, we never actually believed we'd encounter anything truly paranormal. But one night, when I was 21, everything I believed changed forever. That night, 3 friends and I decided to camp near Elkmont, planning to explore the ghost town after dark. We brought flashlights, snacks, and plenty of bravado, confident that nothing there could frighten us. After setting up camp in a clearing not far from the abandoned buildings, we waited until midnight when everything was quiet and still. At first, the exploration was thrilling. The decrepit cabins and abandoned lodges felt frozen in time, shadowy reminders of a once thriving mountain community. Our flashlights pierced through the darkness, revealing peeling wallpaper, decayed furniture, and rusted fixtures. The entire town felt both fascinating and deeply unsettling. As we ventured deeper into the ghost town, I began feeling an odd sensation, as though we were being watched. I dismissed it at first, blaming my imagination. But soon, my friends started mentioning the same uneasy feeling. We all began whispering, our earlier laughter replaced by nervous silence. Suddenly, from somewhere deep within the forest surrounding Elkmont, came a strange, bone-chilling sound, a long, haunting howl that seemed to vibrate through the ground itself. The howl echoed through the night, and all of us stopped dead in our tracks, hearts racing. We glanced around nervously, flashlights flickering in trembling hands, but saw nothing. Still, the forest felt different now, darker, more oppressive, almost hostile. My instincts urged me to leave immediately, but before we could retreat, a heavy crashing sound erupted from the trees behind us. We spun around, aiming our lights toward the noise. What stepped out from the darkness into our beams of light instantly shattered everything I'd ever thought I knew about reality. Standing less than 50 feet away was a monstrous creature, towering at least 7 feet tall, with broad shoulders, heavily muscled arms, and powerful legs. Its entire body was covered in coarse, dark fur, gleaming slightly in our trembling flashlight beams. But most disturbing was its face, a wolf-like snout curled back into a vicious snarl, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. Its eyes glowed a fierce amber color, full of intelligence and a terrifying hunger. The dogman stared at us for several agonizing moments, sizing us up, its massive chest rising and falling as it emitted low, menacing growls. Panic exploded among us. My friends screamed, scattering in different directions, running blindly into the night. I ran too, adrenaline flooding my veins, my heart pounding so loudly in my ears it drowned out everything else. Behind me, I could hear the creature snarling and heavy footsteps crashing through leaves and branches. I didn't dare look back, convinced the monster was directly behind me, closing in rapidly. I sprinted toward our campsite, my lungs burning with exhaustion, desperately hoping to find safety in numbers. But when I finally reached the clearing, it was empty. My friends were nowhere in sight. Terrified and alone, I dove into the tent, fumbling for the hunting knife I'd brought for protection, though I doubted it would do much against the creature I'd seen. Crouched inside, I strained my ears, listening for any sign of movement outside. Forest was deathly silent again, as though the very night itself held its breath. My hands shook uncontrollably as I waited in dread. Then came a sudden, loud thump directly outside the tent, followed by the unmistakable sound of heavy breathing. I froze completely, barely allowing myself to breathe. I could feel the creature's presence mere inches from me, separated by nothing but the thin fabric of my tent. Seconds stretched painfully into minutes as I remained utterly still, praying the dogman wouldn't detect me. Its breathing continued, measured and deliberate, occasionally punctuated by low growls that sent shivers down my spine. It began slowly circling my tent, footsteps padding silently around the perimeter, sniffing inquisitively at the fabric. Suddenly, its massive paw pressed firmly against the tent wall, causing the material to bow inward sharply. I recoiled instinctively, stifling a scream, but pressure released just as quickly, and the creature let out another guttural snarl, clearly sensing my fear. I knew I couldn't remain hidden forever, but every fiber of my being told me that running now would mean certain death. Paralyzed by fear and indecision, I could only hope that the beast would eventually lose interest. After what felt like an eternity, the sounds outside gradually faded, the creature's breathing becoming fainter and more distant until finally silence settled once again over the campsite. Still, I waited for nearly an hour, heart hammering, listening carefully before gathering the courage to emerge from the tent. When I finally stepped outside, dawn was breaking through the trees. My friends returned shortly after, pale and shaken, having hidden separately throughout the night. None of us spoke much on our hike back to the car, each grappling silently with the terrifying truth of what we'd seen. I've never returned to Elkmont since that night, and I've kept my story mostly to myself, knowing few would believe such a fantastic tale. But even now, whenever I drive near those old mountains, I feel a chill creep down my spine, knowing that somewhere in those shadows, the dogman still lurks, watching, waiting patiently for its next unsuspecting victim. I never thought I'd end up sitting in a windowless room at the Gatlinburg police station, staring at a metal table while two detectives questioned me for hours. Yet there I was, exhausted, shaking, and terrified, trying to explain something I knew they would never believe. I'd gone hiking with my girlfriend, Leah, up near the Roaring Fork Trail, a place we both loved. It was supposed to be a simple overnight trip, just the two of us reconnecting, away from the noise and stress of everyday life. We packed light, brought plenty of water and snacks, and set out early in the morning. The weather was perfect, clear skies, crisp air, and the forest alive with birdsong and rustling leaves. We hiked for most of the day, laughing, taking pictures, and stopping at overlooks to admire the view. By late afternoon, we found a quiet spot off the trail to set up camp. We built a small fire, cooked dinner, and as the sun set, we lay side by side on a blanket, watching the stars emerge one by one, It was peaceful, almost perfect. Then, just past midnight, everything changed. It started with a strange noise in the distance, something we couldn't quite place. It wasn't the normal sounds of the woods, not the crackle of branches or the distant calls of owls. This was deep, guttural, and heavy, like something massive moving just out of sight. Leah sat up, whispering that she felt uneasy, and I agreed, trying to brush it off as just an animal passing through. Then we heard the growl. It was close, far too close, and it was like no sound I'd ever heard before. My skin prickled with fear as I grabbed the flashlight, sweeping it over the tree line. That's when I saw it. Standing between the trees, half shrouded in shadow, was a massive figure covered in black fur, standing upright on two legs. Its shoulders were broad, its arms long, ending in clawed hands that flexed and twitched as it stared at us. The snout was unmistakably wolf-like, its mouth hanging open slightly, revealing sharp, gleaming teeth. But it was the eyes that froze me in place, glowing faintly amber, locked directly onto mine. Leah let out a shaky whisper, asking what it was. I couldn't answer. The creature moved fast, far faster than anything that size should be able to. It lunged forward, and before I could even react, it grabbed Leah, yanking her backward into the trees. She screamed, the most horrible, piercing sound I've ever heard, and then the woods swallowed her whole. I ran after them, crashing through the underbrush, flashlight swinging wildly. But within seconds, they were gone, vanished into the dense forest. I searched for hours, calling her name, pleading, crying, hoping I'd see her run back to me. But nothing, no sound, no sign, no trail. It was as if the forest had opened up and taken her away. By dawn, I stumbled back to the trailhead and called for help. Police arrived quickly, followed by search and rescue teams, dogs, helicopters, volunteers. For days, they combed the area, but Leah was never found. No clothes, no body, no blood, no tracks. And that's how I ended up in that interrogation room. Detective Parker sat across from me, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. Beside him, Detective Hayes quietly jotted notes. They asked the same questions over and over. What happened out there? Were Leah and I arguing? Did she want to leave? Did she run off? Why were there no signs of a struggle? I repeated everything, exactly as it happened. I told them about the creature, about the glowing eyes, the black fur, the speed, the way it snatched her like she weighed nothing. But every time I spoke those words, I saw their eyes harden, their faces tighten. Parker leaned forward, his voice sharp. You expect us to believe a monster took her? Is that what you're saying? I tried to explain, tried to make them understand that I was just as desperate for answers as they were. I loved Leah. I would have given anything to bring her back. But every word I said only made them look at me with more suspicion. Eventually, they let me go, but it didn't end there. For weeks, people whispered. Friends pulled away. Her family wouldn't speak to me. Reporters camped outside my house. Neighbors stared when I walked by. Everyone wanted to believe I had done something, that I had hurt her, because the truth was too terrifying to accept. I still hike those trails sometimes, retracing every step, searching for anything, even the smallest clue. But I never find a trace of her, just the memory of her smile and the nightmare of that night. Sometimes, I wake up in a cold sweat, certain that I hear her voice calling faintly from the woods. And sometimes, when I am alone deep in the trees, I feel eyes watching me, glowing softly in the shadows, waiting, patient, as if the creature remembers me and knows I am still here. I have always been an avid hiker, someone who prided himself on being able to navigate any trail, any mountain. The Smokies had become my favorite playground over the years, offering endless ridges, hidden creeks, and beautiful valleys. I loved getting off the beaten path, exploring places where few ever stepped. That confidence, though nearly killed me. It happened last spring, when I decided to tackle a long solo trek near the rugged Greenbrier section of the park. Plan was simple: a 2-day loop through the deep forest. No marked trails, just me, my compass, and the quiet of the woods. For the first day, everything went smoothly. I made good time, found a peaceful spot near a small stream to camp, and settled in for the night. But by the next morning, when a heavy fog rolled in and cloaked the landscape, I quickly realized I was turned around. I kept moving. Sure, I would find my bearings again, but hours passed and nothing looked familiar. My map was useless. My compass spun oddly, and the dense fog seemed to swallow all sound, leaving me in an unsettling, muffled silence. By late afternoon, hunger and exhaustion set in, and I accepted that I was completely lost. I stumbled through thick underbrush, hoping to find some sign of human presence, a trail, a marker, anything. That's when I heard it. A strange, wet tearing sound echoed faintly through the fog. I paused, holding my breath, trying to place the noise. It was rhythmic, deliberate, and disturbingly organic, like something was being pulled apart. Curiosity got the better of me. Quietly, I crept toward the sound, moving slowly, carefully, pushing aside branches, heart pounding in my chest. Then I saw it. In a small clearing ahead, partially obscured by the fog, something massive hunched over a large, dark shape on the ground. As I edged closer, the details became horribly clear. The dark shape was a black bear, sprawled lifeless on the forest floor, blood pooling beneath its massive body. And the thing crouched over it was no predator I'd ever seen in these woods. It stood on 2 legs, its back broad and muscular, covered in thick matted fur. Its arms were long, unnaturally long, ending in clawed hands that dug deep into the bear's flesh. The creature's massive head tilted down as it tore great chunks of meat from the bear's side, its jaws working steadily, the sounds of crunching bone and ripping hide filling the air. My knees nearly buckled as a wave of cold, primal terror washed over me. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I stayed frozen, too horrified to look away. Suddenly, the creature paused, its head snapping up sharply. It sniffed the air, ears twitching, eyes scanning the fog. My breath caught painfully in my throat as those glowing amber eyes settled in my direction. I didn't think, I just ran. Branches lashed my arms and face as I tore blindly through the trees, heart slamming against my ribs, lungs burning with panic. I could hear it behind me, not crashing through the forest like a bear or a deer, but moving with terrifying, unnatural speed, its heavy breaths and low growls closing in. I stumbled, nearly fell, caught myself, and kept running, pushing my body beyond exhaustion, fueled only by sheer survival instinct. I had no idea where I was going, only that I had to keep moving. Eventually, mercifully, the sounds behind me faded. Either it lost interest or decided I wasn't worth the chase. I didn't stop until I collapsed against a fallen log, gasping for breath, sweat pouring down my face, body shaking uncontrollably. I spent the rest of the night trembling beneath that log, too afraid to move, certain that at any moment those glowing eyes would appear again. By dawn, the fog lifted just enough for me to find my bearings and stumble, half dead with exhaustion, back to a trailhead where a pair of startled hikers helped me. I never told anyone the full truth of what I saw that day. I just said I got lost, made up some story about spotting a black bear from a distance, and left it at that. But I know what I saw, and I know it wasn't natural. There's something in the deep parts of those mountains, something powerful enough to take down a full-grown black bear and feast on its body without fear. And if it hadn't been for sheer dumb luck, I would have been its next meal. I never imagined I would owe my life to something I once thought only existed in nightmares. I was hiking alone on the Appalachian Trail, somewhere near the Smokies, wanting to clear my head after a rough breakup. Hiking had always been my therapy, and I needed the space, the quiet, the long stretch of trail under my feet. The first 2 days went fine. Weather was good, trail conditions were decent, and I passed a few other hikers here and there. But by the third day, something started to feel off. I noticed a man following behind me, just far enough back that I couldn't make out his features, but close enough that I knew it wasn't a coincidence. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. Maybe he was just another long-distance hiker keeping a similar pace. But the more I watched him, the more unsettled I felt. He never waved, never greeted me, never spoke when we crossed paths at water stops. His eyes, when I caught a glimpse of them, were cold and empty, watching me too intently. That night, I camped far off the trail, hidden among some rocks and trees, hoping to shake the feeling. But just after midnight, I heard twigs snapping nearby, slow footsteps crunching leaves, moving deliberately toward my tent. My heart pounded as I reached for the small knife in my pack, realizing with sinking dread that I was completely alone, miles from help. Suddenly, the zipper on my tent jerked downward. I let out a panicked yell, kicking blindly, trying to push away whoever was out there. The tent collapsed as a heavy hand grabbed at my ankle, yanking hard, dragging me halfway out. I caught a glimpse of the man's face, gaunt and twisted, eyes wide with something savage and unhinged. He raised a long hunting knife, grinning as he prepared to strike. But before the blade could come down, something massive exploded from the darkness behind him. A deafening snarl filled the air as a huge, black-furred shape lunged from the trees, slamming into the man with bone-shattering force. I scrambled backward, heart pounding, eyes wide with shock and disbelief. The man screamed, a high, panicked shriek that was quickly cut off as the creature tore into him, ripping and tearing with teeth and claws. Blood sprayed across the ground, the man's body jerking and thrashing, then falling still as the monster fed, tearing flesh, crunching bone, devouring him right there in the moonlight. I stayed frozen, too terrified to move, unable to take my eyes off the towering figure crouched over the body. Its wolf-like head was massive, jaws drenched in gore, thick muscles rippling beneath black fur. Its glowing amber eyes flicked up once, locking onto me with a look that felt far too intelligent, far too aware. For a brief moment, we stared at each other, and I swear I felt something pass between us, a strange, unspoken understanding. Then, without a sound, the dogman turned, melting back into the trees, leaving only silence and the mangled remains of the man who had meant to kill me. It took every ounce of strength I had to crawl away, to force myself back to the trail, to stumble down the path until I found another hiker who helped me get to safety. I never told the police the full story. I said I had been attacked by a man on the trail, that I got lucky and escaped somehow. They found what was left of him, but no one could explain the state of his body, how it had been torn apart, half consumed, as if by some enormous predator. I know the truth, though. I know what saved me that night. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder why the dogman intervened. Did it see me as prey, then decide otherwise? Did it simply want the easier meal? Or was there something else at work in those dark woods, something older and more mysterious? Something that decided, just this once, to spare a terrified human and take the monster in human skin instead. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe to Descent into the Unknown for more horror content. If you have any real cryptid encounters, or you're a horror writer wanting to share your stories, please feel free to email me in the description anytime.